Hi, everyone. Welcome to Robust American Love. My name is Karen Carboner, and I am president of the Walt Whitman Initiative. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we have the mission of celebrating New York City's cultural legacy. We serve as an organizing center for cultural activism and poetry-related events, such as the one you're about to enjoy. Please follow us on Facebook and Instagram and tune into our YouTube channel to explore many more presentations in our Robust American Love speaker series. We've been doing this series now since August 2020, I think. So we've got a backlog of some really incredible programming that I hope you take a look at. And if you do like what we're doing, there are many ways to support our programs and initiatives. First of all, you can just go to the support us link at our website. You'll find a PayPal link there and an address for checks. We are totally fueled by our love for poetry. There is no paid member of this group, but we do need to hear from you to sustain these programs and initiatives. We decided to offer this speaker series, and note the word speaker, it's not lecture. And the idea was just to present timely public-facing conversations on Whitman's life, work, and legacy. It's kind of spiraled from that to different subjects. You'll hear conversations and enjoy presentations by teachers, poets, graduate students, artists, printers, neighborhood activists. They're not designed to be academic, so you're going to hear a very informal conversation today, open to your questions, and you can always put in your questions in the chat if you're watching this live, and you can do that on our YouTube channel, as I've said before. Just a couple of things that are coming up for us. Very excited that this summer we may bring back the live version of our Song of Myself marathon. We have been doing it online for 2 summers, and I don't know if we're going to kill that idea. That's gotten a lot of really great feedback and support. But Brooklyn Bridge Park is talking with us about possibly having a Whitman weekend. That would be the first weekend in June. I think it's June 4th and 5th. So please do stay tuned. That might actually be happening. Very excited to see everybody again. And then the other thing that's really pushing forward in a big way is our library. And we have to thank Susan Tain for initiating that. She gave us a really significant donation of Whitman texts, Whitman-related texts, and from that have spiraled forward other donations. St. Francis College donated their Whitman collection to us. It looks like the Library of America also will be making a donation. So just another reason to support us, and also to look out for our opening of that library, an actual physical place you can just enjoy books at 91 South Street down in the Seaport area of New York City. I have to thank Andrew Rimby, who is a Walt Whitman Initiative board member. He is the curator/librarian. He's going down there, getting the library ready, setting up the catalog, making it into a really cool space. So just at a time when bookstores are in jeopardy and libraries are closing, we are trying to instill another love of the physical book, as Whitman would have loved. So please do stay tuned. Maybe the grand opening around June 4th, 5th for that Whitman weekend. But first, today, very excited to open the year with an incredible group. We have a panel, which is awesome. So we're going to have lots of different cross conversations here about giving voice to Whitman in Turkish. And our highlighted speaker, we're very honored to have the poet Fahri Öz with us, and he's going to present a general picture of Whitman translations in Turkish, and also his strategy in translating the entirety of Leaves of Grass into Turkish for the very first time. So just a little bit about Fahri. You're going to learn much more about him as the show goes on. Fahri taught at Ankara University until 2016, and he signed an academic for peace declaration at that time, was dismissed from the university in 2017. He had been teaching British and American poetry, specializing in literary history, translation, poetic genres. And he finally came to the US. Lucky us that we have him last August. So at the height of COVID, Fahri joined us here in the Midwest. He's in Iowa and currently a visiting scholar at the University of Iowa. He's in residence at the university's International Writing Program. And Fahri has been doing much more than just translating Whitman. Hopefully he'll tell us a bit about it. I think actually he's translating 3 poets at the same time right now because he's an exciting guy. So it's not just Whitman that he's working on, but also Emily Dickinson and I believe William Carlos Williams. Am I right, Fahri?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they are at rather initial stages, I should say. I launched into Emily Dickinson project last year, and the complete poems will come out in 3 volumes. And I've been working on the first volume, and I came halfway through with that volume. So assuming, bearing in mind the fact that, she has written 1,800 poems, roughly speaking, I've got to translate, so 600 poems or so. So I am somewhere in 300 or 400 poem, number 400 or something. So I'm halfway through with the first volume. And my William Carlos Williams affair, let's say, is just is a toddler. I've been reading the complete poems. I've been making selections. I haven't really started translating them per se, but yeah, we'll see.
Very exciting to think how translating a complete oeuvre of a writer gives you an overview on those writers. And actually, just one of the many benefits to talking with you is getting a grasp on the number of poems that these authors have written. Like, I did not realize that Emily had written so many more than Walt. Yeah. 1,800 shorter poems, yeah, of course.
Right, sure.
But Walt coming in around 300-400, I think you told me.
Yeah, but that's a misleading comparison, I think, because Emily Dickinson wrote rather short lyrics, and then some of her later poems are really much shorter, like 4 lines or 8 lines, and her early poems are 12 to 16 lines and so on, or 8 lines at least. So it might be misleading, as I said, speaking in terms of the number of poems, but in terms of the bulk, the amount of poetry they both wrote, I think they are roughly the same in a sense. I don't know. Whitman's poetry is about 600 pages or so, roughly speaking. And Emily is like that too. Yeah, so 750 or something. So yeah.
I love how casual you are about translating 600 pages. Okay, before we get into it, I have two more illustrious guests to present. And many of you already know and love Jesse Morandi, who is also a Whitman Initiative board member. He is the Director of Digital Humanities and Digital Exhibitions at the Bard Graduate Center. We did a program, Jesse and I, at the beginning of Robust American Love on his location-based mobile experience, Vanishing Leaves. And I still urge you all to go to that website, Vanishing Leaves, and read his dissertation. It was the first successfully defended all digital dissertation at CUNY. So really a landmark work, and he's been doing incredible stuff at Bard. And also, Jesse, I will not forget, and I think Fahri also saw it, how in the last Song of Myself marathon, just by virtue of digital magic, you began our marathon in Istanbul.
Yeah, that was fun. I originally thought I wasn't going to be able to participate because I was traveling abroad, and then it just occurred that it was perfect to use our tools to connect around the world. So we had last year a bunch of people from all over the world, which made it a very kind of international affair. Speaking of one of the great things about having the marathon online, That was really cool. And I also, my Turkish story of following Whitman, I was kind of early on very excited to find a translation of Whitman in Turkish. So when I was in Turkey, I had Olgu take me to all the marketplaces where they have these little warrens of, you know, booksellers. And we would go in and ask one after the other if they had a Walt Whitman translation. And time after time, they said no. And I was holding hope that there was a edition somewhere. And I started researching and looking, and of course there is none unless it's long forgotten. So this was so exciting, Fahri, to meet you. And I had seen some of your translations on the Walt Whitman archive in the translation section, I think it wasn't Ken Price,
It's that University of Iowa writing project, I think, where they have various, I think up to 19, right, Fahri, different translations of Song of Myself. And I believe they use your translation and someone else's too, right?
Yeah, there is a fellow translator who also contributed to that page. I take several. Yeah, I will talk about the present, translations available in Turkish very briefly when time comes.
Very interesting to think about it. And also Kismet for Jesse, right? Who's searching through the markets. It sounds so exotic, Jesse.
It was.
I love Istanbul myself. I've been there twice. I mean, but I can just imagine that search.
Well, that I think that's simply bad luck, because we have this translation in Turkish still available in Turkey. But well, you weren't lucky enough. So, all right.
I wasn't lucky enough. Yeah. Now I'm armed with knowledge and I will find it.
But how old is that translation?
Well, I think that was made in 1954 or 55. Yeah. But it's still available after, I don't know, 20 or 30 reprints and so on. It's still available. I mean, yeah.
Oh, fine.
With noted omissions. I remember talking to you about it, right?
Yeah.
That a lot of the poems are excerpted, and there are notable poems that are not in there, such as the Calamus poems.
Yeah, exactly.
So definitely not what you were looking for, Jesse Morandi.
And no, a start though. Now I know. I can. When we go out next time, I will know what to ask for. We'll find that.
Also, where to look.
Yeah.
Right. I also want to introduce Olgu, sitting next to Jesse, Olgu Morandi, who we're so delighted to have here. Olgu was actually lucky enough to be born in Istanbul and moved here, I guess, in 2006, but is a native speaker. And in addition to being a movement and mindfulness teacher, she is an actor and a playwright, and she has a mellifluous tone. So Olgu, thank you so much for joining us and for agreeing to read some of these gorgeous poems, maybe for the first time, Fahri, right? Like I don't know, anywhere.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Song of Myself page run by IWP at University of Iowa, they are planning to introduce certain readings, recordings of, readings and so on. So yeah, but so I'm really looking forward to Olga's, reading of my translation. Yeah.
Well, just a shout out to Iowa that Olgu's available for the recordings.
Yeah,
I'm speaking for you,
okay.
Olgu.
Sure.
And speaking of that, Olgu, I know you selected and Fahri, you kind of worked together to pick out a translation that you wanted to start with, because we felt that Walt should have the first word. So do you want to introduce the selection that you'll be reading from Fahri's book? And I should say, Fahri, your book is not out yet, or are the first 2 volumes out of the 4?
Yes, only the first 2 are out, and the third I have completed and submitted to the publishing house. So I'm waiting. Well, I'm waiting for the editor to work on it. I'm sure they are quite busy with the COVID-19 and so on.
So just for the people who are listening, could they purchase the first 2 volumes right now, for instance, in the US?
Yeah, definitely, yes.
And the publisher is, just so that we get that out there?
Well, that is Türkiye İş Bankası Kültür Yayınları. I will, also share the visuals of this, edition. And it's called Chimenya Practice, 1 and 2. And the third one will be coming, and hopefully I will continue with the last volume.
What does that title mean, by the way?
Leaves of Grass.
Oh, it does.
Yes, of course.
Turkish lesson number 1.
All right. Right.
2 words, you know.
Well, thank you. And Olgu, if you could tell us about what you will be reading.
I will be reading the section 21, small part from Song of Myself.
And this was a part that Olgu translated previously for one of our marathons, and I read the English and Olgu translated it in a different version, her translation of 21. This is Fahri's translation though.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
But we love, this section has a strong feelings of, but we have a connection to it. It has a very powerful feelings of love and the sentiment of connection with others. So we were drawn to doing this one together anyway.
Jesse helped me select this one. Of course, I read the Turkish version of it and Jesse read the original version of it, and he was playing his guitar at the same time. So there was musicality to the experience, and he thought that I would love this, and I totally did. I read this and I can totally connect with it. So that's why I really like this section.
Photos of that, because that was, I will never forget that.
To share, actually. I looked for it to share, but everything is just, I guess my folders are not as organized as I thought it would be.
We have them online. Actually, Jesse, you put them up there.
I didn't know you put them.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So we have them, but also Brooklyn Bridge Park features, even still on their website, some photos of that time, because it was so, I think everybody felt it so deeply when you both did that, just conveying so much love and good energy through that reading. So thank you for conjuring that up again for us during COVID times. We could all use a little bit of love.
That was a pleasure. So I decided, just previously we quickly discussed this, and I have to, one thing if I learned from acting is to commit to an idea. So I am going to commit to just reading your version of it completely. There was just one word I was asking a question about, and I felt a little differently, but I will commit to this version of Fahri's as it is.
Terrific. All right, take it away.
Bedenin ozanıyım, ruhun da ozanıyım. Cennetin hazları bende, cehennemin acıları da. İlkini nakledip kendime yükseltiyorum, diğerini yeni bir dile tercüme ediyorum. Nasıl erkeğin ozanıysam, kadının da ozanıyım. Diyorum ki bir kadın olmak erkek olmak kadar mühimdir. Diyorum işte, daha büyük bir şey yoktur insanların anasından gayrı. Şarkısını söylüyorum genişlemenin ya da gururun. Yeterince baş eğdik ve küçümsendik. Büyüklüğün tek gelişme olduğunu gösteriyorum. Diğerlerini geride mi bıraktın? Başkan mı oldun? Önemsiz bir şey bu. Birçokları oraya erişmekten fazlasını yapacak, daha ileriye gidecektir. Benim o yumuşak ve büyüyen geceyle yürüyen, gecenin hemen hemen zapt ettiği karaya ve denize sesleniyorum. Yakına gel çıplak bağırlı gece. Yakına gel mıknatıslı, besleyen gece. Güney rüzgarının gecesi, birkaç büyük yıldızın gecesi. Hala başını sallayan gece. Çılgın, çıplak yaz gecesi. Gülümse ey şehvetli, serin nefesli yeryüzü. uyuklayan ıslak ağaçların yeryüzü, yola çıkan gün batımının yeryüzü, zirvesi sisli dağların yeryüzü, yalnızca maviye çalan dolunayın camsı akışının yeryüzü, ırmağın akışını bekleyen parıltılı ve karanlığın yeryüzü, hatırım için daha parlak ve berrak görünen duru gri bulutların yeryüzü, dirsekleriyle uzaklara çullanan yeryüzü, bol elma çiçekli yeryüzü, gülümse, sevdiceğin geldi, cömertçe aşk verdin bana, bu yüzden ben de sana aşk veriyorum. Kelimelerle anlatılamayan tutkulu aşk.
That was fantastic.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Fahri, I'm curious about your reaction.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, it's a beautiful rendition. I mean, yeah, loved it. Simply loved it.
Thank
It's
you.
so interesting when one knows something really well. Like I know Jesse, you're on the same page as I am. Like we know this part just from studying it and reading it. And then when Olgu gives us such a feeling version of it in a different language, I feel like I could still understand it somehow. It's strange, right? But that's a combination of a really excellent translation and a really good reader. Fahri, would you mind reading the English, the original
Not at
Whitman
all, yeah.
text? And I think you used the deathbed edition, right, for
Sure.
these poems.
Okay. I am the poet of the body, and I am the poet of the soul. The pleasures of heaven are with me, and the pains of hell are with me. The first I graft and increase upon myself. The latter I translate into any tongue. I am the poet of the woman, the same as the man. And I say it is as great to be a woman as to be a man. And I say there is nothing greater than the mother of men. I chant the chant of dilation and pride. We have had ducking and deprecating about enough. I show that size is only development. Have you outstripped the rest? Are you the president? It is a trifle. They will more than arrive there, everyone, and still pass on. I am he that walks with the tender and growing night. I call to the earth and see half held by the night. Press close, bare bosomed night. Press close, magnetic, nourishing night. Night of south winds, night of the large wave stars. Still nodding night, mad, naked, summer night. Smile, O voluptuous, cool-breathed earth. Earth of the slumbering and liquid trees. Earth of departed sunset. Earth of the mountains mist-topped, earth of the vitreous pour of the full moon just tinged with blue, earth of shine and dark mottling the tide of the river, earth of the limpid gray of clouds brighter and clearer for my sake, far swooping elbowed earth, rich apple blossomed earth, smile, for your lover comes. Prodigal, you have given me love. Therefore, I to you give love. Oh, unspeakable, passionate love.
Wow. All right. That was we're enlisting you for the marathon, Fahri.
Yeah, I'm in it. I've already
You're committed.
Thank you. Right.
Spoken like someone who really knows the words. It's very, very moving to hear it. And I'm wondering if we can use your Turkish version and the original text to sort of lift off our discussion by talking about the particular challenges of doing a text like this, especially in Turkish. And, I guess I wanted to open up our conversation, Fahri, with asking you, like, why translate Whitman at all? Right? Like, he's so American when you hear the words.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowingly American, right? The broadness of it, the kind of sloppiness of it, what attracted you to translating Whitman?
Well, I don't know. I remember reading Walt Whitman in Turkish when I was at high school or so. And then in my undergrad program, I remember reading them in Turkish, in English. And afterwards, I became a university lecturer. So I started teaching it. So, and after I was dismissed, I bumped into this huge translation project by Türkiye İş Bankası. It's a private bank established by Atatürk, the founder of Turkish Republic. And I was planning to translate some other people, like, I don't know, Charles Dickens maybe, or I don't know, or Jack London, an author who could sell more, a bestseller, a potential bestseller author, rather than Whitman, rather than poetry, because poetry is like anywhere else is not as popular as fiction in Turkey too. So, but all the popular authors were commissioned to certain translators. So they said, well, we have Walt Whitman, would you like to translate it? So, and as to your question, the fact that Whitman is so American, so what makes it appealing to Turkish readers and so on? I think, okay, so Walt Whitman is an American poet, speaking of America, American people, American democracy, and so on. And but still, he has this how should I say, this tendency to address and appeal to people all over the world, and he has this cosmic search, he wants to see himself as a romantic poet leading the way to people of the world, to different peoples of the world, and so on. So he's how should I say, specifically American, but also he's a universal poet talking about equality, human rights, and so on, and breaking this dichotomy between male and female, black and white, and so on. So I think that is what makes Whitman quite appealing to many different cultures, many different people.
I love the story about how a bank brought you to Whitman. That's a totally un-Whitmanic approach to translating Whitman. But you went from there and a hesitant yes to the passion that we heard you read the section 21 of Song of Myself. So something happened en route with translating this, it seems.
Well, no, I wasn't hesitant, but I did not have, Whitman in my mind. You see, I had something, some other author who could be more, I don't know, popular. Well, I never thought that, Whitman, especially his complete poems, should be translated into, Turkish. And this is something that only, really established publishing houses can venture. I mean, it's a risky business, so so I was lucky, I should say. And I was honored. Later, I really enjoyed doing it, Previously, I had translated Christina Rossetti, but I had made a selection of her poems, rather than the complete poems, because her poetry is mostly, verses for children or religious poetry and so on, which is not really appealing to general readership. But the case with Whitman is different. Whitman appeals to everyone, and he is beyond religious or cultural or ideological borders. So he is a really, poet of the democracy, also in the sense that he appeals to almost any readership all over the world.
one of the reasons that I guess maybe you didn't think of Whitman as universal, because, certainly we do, right? Like we run an organization named after him, for goodness sake. But I think the history of the Turkish translations probably affected you this way, right? Like Whitman was not readily available in Turkish when you were doing your work.
Okay, let me share screen, and I, by the way, talk about the previous translations of
Please, yeah.
Whitman in Turkish. Okay, so here we go. Sorry, I have to move this. Okay, so the first translation in Turkish came out in 1951, if I'm not wrong, by a translator called Suat Taşer. And this was, an interesting book, also, a book as an object, because you see this, the size of the page. And this is very Whitman-esque because, because the lines are, the lines are not broken. It goes on and on and on. It's so, broadside. Is that what you call it? So,
Yeah.
Right. So, and this is something that, in fact, appeals to the aesthetics and of Whitman. The leaves of grass. Leaves of grass are everywhere, and they are equal. Okay, there are many, and they continue as far as the eye can see on the horizon. So if Whitman were given a page continuing, continuing from one end to other without a break, he could have written Leaves of Grass in one line, continuing one line, going, I don't know, kilometers, I don't know, or hundreds of yards, whatever. So, so this was the first translation of Walt Whitman, but this is a very short selection, a couple of pages, I think 20 page long or something. And then we had Mehmet Fuat's translation. Sorry. Okay. This is one of the earlier, the cover of the earlier editions of Walt Whitman in Turkey. Again, Leaves of Grass, Chimenya Practice. But again, this is, let me see, 100 and something, okay, 160 page long edition. And this, this translation is still available in newer editions, and it's very popular. Somehow people got to know about Walt Whitman thanks to the translation of Mehmet Fuat, who was, by the way, stepson of the famous Turkish poet Nazım Hikmet. And he was a translator, a critic, an author, and who studied English literature and who translated many other, British and American authors. And sorry. And then, okay, so in the book format, my translations came out or begin to come out. So these are the first two volumes. For those who are interested in buying the Turkish edition, well, here we are. And I also should mention the translations which are available online by Aytek Sever, a friend of mine. I came to know him after my, translations were online, went online in Iowa University's, Whitman page. And this is the Song of Myself. Okay, Ben Lee'nin şarkısı, the Song of Myself. And he also has I think, also has a collection of, some selected poems from Whitman's Leaves of Grass, seçmiş şiirler, selected poems. So, I think that's all I can say about the, I don't want to occupy too much of your time.
So, it's fascinating, actually. And can I ask, Olgu, when you were growing up in Turkey and going to university, did you read any Whitman there? You guys are muted. Yeah.
I was introduced to Whitman through Jesse. I did not know about Walt Whitman before I met him.
So there were quite a few kind of sporadic translations out there, Fahri, but I guess the point was that there was no central big, go-to volume, the thing that you actually produced.
You're right. I mean, Mehmet Fuat's translation, gave the readers a general, satisfactory, but not to the depth, of course, introduction of who Whitman was, what kind of poetry he wrote, and so on. And Mehmet Fuat, the translator, introduces Whitman as a poet of democracy, just like the first translator of Whitman. I mean, they both introduced and considered Whitman as a poet of democracy, a poet of equality, and so on. So, those principles of human rights, equality, and so on and so on.
So I'm wondering, first of all, why you were chosen, you think, for this project? In other words, what brought you to the project? And also, just a related question, I guess, is what do you bring to the project? In other words, I know you're a poet, and hopefully we'll get to hear some of your own poetry as well, but I can't help but think that must have been very useful when you were trying to sort of navigate and figure out this really complicated, big text and big person.
Well, I don't know. I think I was lucky enough because I was interested in poetry, teaching it, translating it, and writing it. And I sent the publishing house, a translation, so that they can see the way I translate, poetry. So they liked it. So I was, in that sense, lucky because I was a lover of poetry, let's say. I think that's the reason, I should say. And I was also lucky because I worked with this tremendously perfect editor, and I would like to, mention his name, Ali Altan Inal. He's a really experienced editor who worked, painstakingly with me, and he gave me such extensive feedback on my translation. So, and I don't know, I would say luck, pure luck.
Do you write poetry, anything like Whitman's poetry?
Well, I don't know. No, not really. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, well, as I said in our chat before the program began, well, my book of poems may be kind of reminiscent of Whitman in the sense that they look like poem and prose, but I'm not. I don't have this Whitman-esque project of pretending to be or claiming to be a poet of democracy, of plurality and whatever. Well, I'm not talking about multitudes and so on. I do not contain multitudes, whatever. That I may contain some, a couple of people maybe, but not multitudes, definitely. But yeah, and I don't know. I mean, Whitman is a great poet. Let's admit that, but you have to pass on to something else. I mean, William Carlos Williams. I mean, he was in love with the revolutionary, steps that Whitman took, but he felt that he had to go beyond Walt Whitman, and he introduced certain naive techniques into American poetry, like varied fruit and so on and so on. I don't know. Maybe unawares, I am influenced, definitely. Yeah.
Going back to the first, the poetry that Olgu read and that you read, I'm wondering if we can open the conversation to everybody here and just ask about some of the issues, maybe some of the real challenges of translating Whitman. Like Olgu, because I know you have also tried to do it, as you were talking about with Section 21 and the Song of Myself Marathon. Just as a native Turkish speaker, is there anything that comes to mind with what would make translating Whitman so complicated?
To me, first, the language, the old English that I had to just tap on Jesse's shoulder. So what does that mean? Instead of Googling or getting a actual dictionary to, properly like a Shakespeare translation. Instead of doing that, I was lucky to just work on it with Jesse. That was, I would say, the only difficulty for me. Besides from that, I gave myself, knowing the song of the Myself Marathon was open to, and not so, I didn't feel limited because of I have attended as an audience. I felt like I am going to read this poem and understand it for myself. And I want there to be harmony and a little bit of a musicality. So how would I feel it? So I gave myself full freedom and permission to do it in that way. So it was a joy. It wasn't, I didn't feel frustrated. I did feel challenged in some ways because I really wanted to make it sound a little musical, lyrical. So maybe I don't remember, this was a couple years ago, and I wish I could find where I wrote it in hand and did not save it on my computer, but I'll do it again and I will definitely share it. So that was a joy. I like I really treat it like a song for myself in translating it.
The emotional content and the personal connection to the lines really fed you there, I think. And that's something, I guess, Fahri, that goes into what you did, although yours, of course, has also the academic side to it, right? That it has to adhere to certain rules and regulations.
Yeah,
I'm wondering, for you, like, what is there something that you are particularly proud of facing down as you were working through these poems?
First, I would like to focus on the fact that, Whitman's poetry is different from Shakespeare or Emily Dickinson, for that matter, or Edgar Allan Poe, and because he doesn't stick to rules of versification. He doesn't use rhyme scheme and so on. He doesn't even depend on so much internal rhyme and so on, or alliteration for that matter, right? So he is interested in the way that some sort of music rises out of daily speech. So he is the forerunner of, William Carlos Williams and, Ezra Pound and so on and so on. But when translating Whitman, I think difficulty lies in the fact that you have to perform them. And, after translating, after editing them, proofreading, you should read them out loud and see whether that barbaric Job sounds good, whether it sounds really musical, nice, whatever. Olgu's, objection to a word choice in my translation was to the point. I definitely agree with her because I chose two words but she preferred one word. One word would suffice, and it sounds better, when you choose one word rather than two words. So I mean, so the whole thing boils down to the fact that Whitman is a kind of performative poet. He's not a solitary guy. Just like in his own life, he was a type mixing with other people and so on, talking to them and so on. So he needs to be, I think, recited out loud so that one can see whether it works or not.
I love that idea, actually, that you said, you as a translator, like Olgu also, you needed to hear it.
Yeah.
And I guess that, Jesse, is what propels things like the Song of Myself marathon. There is something about it that we need to hear. And of course, Whitman trained as an orator. He thought at one point that he would be one. That was an actual occupation for 19th century Americans, to become someone who could just recite things on stage. Although I've heard mixed things about his own voice, right? And we have that one recording of Whitman supposedly reciting America, and he doesn't sound all that fresh and great, but still, just the idea of enunciating Whitman, of hearing him, is such a critical part of this. You mentioned now, because I know that Olgu and you worked together on Section 21. Can you tell us that one word, two word thing specifically where you guys differed with your idea of the translation?
Okay, let me go back to my translation. Okay, so the line in my translation goes like, I would like to read out those two lines. Benim o yumuşak ve büyüyen, geceyle yürüyen, gecenin hemen hemen zapt ettiği karaya ve denize sesleniyor. Here I use the words hemen hemen to cover the word half held or nearly held. So the word hemen hemen, almost, nearly, not completely. So and Olga suggested that we should use neredeyse, right, Olga? Am I right?
Right.
So it's it has shorter syllables and so on, and maybe it will read more fluently in that way. So the rhythm changes slightly, but meaningfully.
What is great, Fahri, is I think we're getting a really great reading of you and how open and fluid you are to thinking about the translation as a work in progress, that there's always room for another interpretation and another way of seeing it, which sounds very Whitmanic to me, actually.
Exactly. I mean, a poem is never finished. So it continues to be, rewritten, reinterpreted, and so on and so on. And we have the best example of this in Whitman himself. I mean, he edited his poems, throughout his life. There are 7 different editions, and there are also, minor corrections and so on in between those 7 editions. So, so he believed that, his poems were living organisms, and so like a tree, like leaves of grass, he was, mowing them, and they, and so, yeah.
I really love you're bringing your poetic soul to this, which is really wonderful. Do you have advice for, the people out there that are listening? And, oh, wait, we have a hand up. Oh my gosh, it's like teaching. Go for it.
I'm interested in, like, you brought up the barbaric yop. So my first question is, there are many words which are like very Whitman. He parsed from different languages and borrowed. So how did you deal with parts of the poem where a word like yop came up?
Yeah,
Try to embrace the spirit, or did you just put yop?
Well, I remember reading an article on this barbaric yop in Turkish translations of Walt Whitman, but I can't remember which song was it. Which section in
Oh, it's at the very end of
Yeah.
Song of Myself.
48 or something. I don't really remember. I don't remember how I translated that part. So, so if you can Google it up, and I can.
Section 52,
Yeah, I mean,
last
it's been-
section. Yeah.
Last section. Okay. So yeah,
Two.
barbaric Job. So it's one of the one of the most popular lines, isn't it? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We have it also in That
Memorable.
Boys Society, in the movie. So the last section, 52, is it which?
The spotted hawk swoops and accuses me. He complains of my gab and my loitering. I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable.
I got it.
You still try to translate him.
Oh,
Oh.
barbaric Job is barbar ütüşümü. Well, it's kind of, pathetic rather than climactic. So barbaric Job, in the English, it takes flight. So it's a rising intonation and so on. But so my rendition is ünlüyorum barbar ütüşümü dünyanın çatıları üstünden. I mean, as a line, it somehow works. But when you take the phrase barbaric Job and, so it's barbar ütüşümü or barbarca ütüşümü. Well, as a line, it works. But as a phrase, I think I'm not as good as Whitman.
May I
So-
ask one question about that actually relates to this? So in Turkish, we don't use gender pronouns.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate our language for that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, especially when you're translating songs or poems, it brings attention to the action and the feeling versus the who is. How do you feel about that? How do you, does it ever challenge you to not the pronoun there? Just continue on. That's what I usually choose, to just continue on what the action is, what's the meaning is.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, the third person singular pronoun can be a pain in the neck, really, especially if you are translating someone like Gertrude Stein or John Cage, where you don't have so many contextual, clues and so on. But in Whitman, you have thousands of contextual clues and so on. So I did not feel that this was, a particularly serious problem or difficulty. But in some cases, with Gertrude Stein and John Cage, both of whom I translated, that can be a bit problematic. So you have to use the word kadın or erkek, male or female, or you may, put some footnotes or endnotes, explain to the reader that, the third person singular here is male, female, and so on. So I don't know, maybe there are other ways of glossing your translation in other ways, like, I don't know.
Thank you.
So I didn't quite get that now, Fahri. It is in Turkish, is it obvious when you are writing in a male or female voice, or is it not?
It's not.
It's not, right?
In Turkish, we have only one singular, third person singular pronoun, o. And it can refer to a male, a female, or neutral thing.
Or cat.
Go Turkish.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's like,
It's very
Whitman.
practical.
It's very Whitman-esque, I feel like, because
Exactly.
it embraces all the multitude.
Exactly. Yeah, you're definitely right. So it is very democratic and gender-free, so to speak. So yeah.
yeah, his use of I, you tries to solve that problem in English, right? Just like avoiding gender entirely as much as he could.
Yeah.
But then with the, the really, like the Calamus poems or Live Oak with Moss, I mean, I know you are translating those for the first time, right, into Turkish, the same-sex love poems. Is there any controversy around that? I mean, I guess not in this day and age, but I'm just wondering maybe why they were not translated before.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, this would be like mind reading, and I don't want to go into that detail, but yeah, somehow, certain parts in Whitman's poems where he talks about, eroticism, sexuality, and so on, are not covered in Mehmet Fuat's translation. I mean, this one. But in the first translation in 1951 by Suat Taşar, the translator was somehow bolder. He was somehow bolder in, rendering certain, erotic details and so on, or things like put your hand through my shirt and feel my breast and so on, things like that. So interesting. Yeah.
Is there a still controversial after all these years? I'm just reading some of the chat words here. That's definitely true. I think, what you are doing, is to open up Whitman in a new way for Turkish readers, especially if they somehow didn't get to the juicy bits that were in the earlier translations, but to just see all of the Calamus poems translated. That was one of the wonderful things when I looked at your table of contents, to just like see the list of all of those Calamus poems. Because even here, a lot of people who meet Whitman meet "Oh Captain, My Captain," sort of an expurgated, cleaned up version of Walt Whitman, and are surprised when they get to, the racier stuff. So I feel like this translation that you're offering is doing a really a huge thing for Whitman.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And the censorship issue is not related to eroticism and sexuality only. It's also it can cover other areas. I was told by Christopher Merrill, who runs the international writing program at Iowa University. He said that certain parts of Whitman were not translated into Russian because he talks about the individual and so on. You see, so the idea, because it's against this idea of collectivity, this socialistic worldview where individuals are. In fact, I mean, this Whitman's idea should appeal to this idea of socialism, because people are like leaves of grass. They grow where water and soil is available, and they are the same size. You cannot differentiate one from the other, and so on, right? So there's this idea of equality, but somehow Christopher Merrill told me that it was not translated fully into Russian before the fall of the Berlin Wall. So he was referring to it. I think an early translation in 1930s or 40s. By the way,
it's interesting what gets translated and what doesn't. So I mean, there could be a whole study on just the different countries who translate a poet like Whitman to compare what parts would be objectionable, like you're pointing out here, and it's very interesting.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. And I think just, what you're allowing is for wonderful new scholarship and Whitmaniacs to emerge from Turkey. There's these 4 volumes, this huge work that you've been working on now. How long has it been?
Well, the first volume came out in 2019. Yeah.
Okay, but still, like so much time and so much love going into this. And then, I think the fruits are yet to be enjoyed, really. So let's see, we are going to have to wrap it up, I think, because we are always trying to keep it in 1 hour. We could go on and on, Fahri, but we're so incredibly indebted to you for being here. And I think one way to exit, which will tie in with some of the things we said, is to have you read one of your own poems so that we get a flavor for you as an artist. and how
Okay.
that might connect with Whitman. So,
Well, do I have my, so, all right. I'll read a very short section from my poems in English, and then I'll read it in translation. Okay, first let me, okay, where is that? Share screen, desktop, and okay, here we go. All right. So, well, this is one of my poems in English. Okay, now that I'm sharing the screen, I better start with that. It was translated into English by Eylül Doğanay at the MFA program for literature translation here at Iowa University. I'm grateful for her. I'm grateful for her translation. So I might as well begin with the English translation. An indigo blue Skoda stacked with calico wobbles its wonky tires on the scorching asphalt road along the Mediterranean. Its driver takes off his flat cap and wipes off the sweat off his forehead. The tin hood of his trusted truck wedges through the air like a beast of prey, a hound in pursuit. Through the flapping layers of smoldering flowers on branches and birds of fustian and poplin rolls, innumerable adverbs of place spatter onto the blue tableau of June. Okay, so that's it. So I can share the Turkish version.
please.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. Basma yüklü çivit mavisi bir Skoda kamyonet ilerliyor Akdeniz'de. Yükünden yalpalayan yampiri tekerlekleriyle pişmiş asfaltın üstünde. Sürücüsü kasketini çıkarıp siliyor alnındaki terleri. Teneke gibi kaportasıyla yarıyor havayı emektar araba. Bir av hayvanı. Gideceği yeri bilen bir tazı gibi. Ne kadar çok yer zarfı savruluyor, pat pat çarpan çiçekli dallarda kuşlar pazen topunun, poplin topunun terleyen ucundan mavi tablosuna Haziran'ın.
Beautiful in both languages and leaving us with such a beautiful impression of the blue Mediterranean. This is what I want to see right now in January. Olgu, any reaction to the Turkish?
Sorry? Oh, yeah.
I loved hearing it, and definitely both Jesse and I spend a lot of time in the Mediterranean every time we go back to visit, and we love it. So I imagine the roads and the Skoda going on the narrow by the coastline. Sweet.
Lovely and full of joy and full of color, and those long lines that Whitman loved. Fahri Öz, thank you so much for being here. Jesse and Olgu Mirandi, thank you for amplifying the conversation and bringing your knowledge and love of Whitman here. I'm overwhelmed by what we could still do, but we'll sign off now. And thanking everybody for tuning in tonight. Also, we'll see you next month. And have a good evening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was an honor. I enjoyed it really. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody.